Our guest today is Sam Sawyer, a good friend of mine, but his alter ego is Barney Fife.
You need to be scared of that.
Just take
Oh no, I'm good, buddy. E.T., thanks for showing up. Yeah, last time you had me, when was that? About 6 months ago?
A couple
Yeah, he
weeks
said,
ago.
hey, can you come? Charlie's here. Oh, this is big, buddy. No, hey, you told me to come and show up. You said, come show up. And all this stuff, do me a favor. Well, I showed up. You had like 10 people here. Guess who wasn't here? E.T. wasn't here.
We got 20 here today.
You got 20. You're good, buddy. Hey, Otis, how you doing there, big boy? Yeah, no, this is great. And the fun girl's back there serving the dish. Yeah. Where's Molly at? Couldn't get her to work today either, huh? Yeah, I figured.
That's one. Is it Juanita?
Juanita over to diner, yeah. You want to do this or you want me to, buddy? I don't even know why I'm here.
Hey, I gotta know.
Yeah. Hey! Got your legs or you riding the chicken? Are you not leaving? Sit down. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, I appreciate it, buddy. Hey, I know y'all are on time limit here, so I'm gonna just, you wanna just talk a little bit about Mayberry? Yeah, we'll talk about Mayberry. I'm not doing my other stuff with you. Charlie, thanks for being here, man. How you doing? I was here about 6 months ago. Had me come, yeah. Well, I had to fly from Knoxville, change clothes, and get out here. So I appreciate you having me. But I was out here, and you weren't here, and we talked a little bit about Mayberry. And Sunday, how many of you are Mayberry fans?
Everybody.
Who is? How many of you are Mayberry fans? Stand back there in your hand. No, I've had the privilege to do this for a while now. In fact, I got to thinking, E.T., this morning, today is my youngest son's 20th birthday. And he played the little Leon, the little boy that had the peanut butter jelly sandwich with Miss Helen Hammer. We did a commercial. And I was trying to think, that was probably 16 years ago. And I think a lot of times about how God's blessed us to get to go a lot of places doing it. I got stopped coming in here last night and was asking me about, she said, what do you charge? You come out to a birthday party or something like that? And I tell people all the time, I said, in East Tennessee, the problem I run into is, y'all think I do this as a hobby when we've been blessed to go to 21 states and do different events and stuff and been really blessed. But we love doing Barney as our platform, but my passion's been ministry. And I love doing ministry and being able to share the gospel doing Barney. We've had the privilege of doing that. We just came from about a 9.5 hour drive from Plainview, Arkansas to do a Wednesday night thing for a church here just a few weeks ago. And I was out there and I was asking them some things. I said, now what do you want done and what do you want to do? Because we get some pretty weird requests. I gotta be honest with you. I have done a lot of police agencies, law enforcement agencies, and I love, my heroes are preachers and policemen. That's the truth. And Charlie can remember, my daddy was the chief of police in Norris when I was growing up. And so I always loved and respected law enforcement. But I love and respect preachers. So I asked this preacher, I said, what do you want done tonight? And he said, well, we got a small community. He said, we're a lot like Mayberry. They had about 350 people in their population in this little town in Plainview, Arkansas. And he says, we just want to see if people come out. And we was blessed. We had almost 350, 400 people show up to this event. And I asked him, I said, now, are these all residents? He said, I don't know who half of these people are. They certainly don't go to church here. But it's amazing to me how God opens doors for you. And we have been so privileged. If you're a Mayberry fan, Sunday was the 61st anniversary of the first time the Andy Griffith Show aired. It's hard to believe, 61 years. And one of the things I enjoy doing, we a lot of times we'll have people, and E.T.'s had me at several events. It's been a while, but he's had me at events, and I've got a routine, and my wife actually came up with this routine several years ago where we get people up to role play with us. And I'm sitting here, and every time I see an audience, I'm sitting here, and I'm always looking at people that are Mayberry characters. Bear, I've still yet to find out what you are. You're certainly not Andy. Your waves have left.
Ernest T.
Ernest T. Bass. We got a couple of good oldies in here too.
Oh, yeah.
But I always get intrigued by people who ask me about the Andy Griffith Show, about you know, things about the Andy Griffith Show and how I got started. Danny Thomas and Sheldon Leonard were so brilliant to bring about the Andy Griffith Show. If you still watch it, there was a young man walking down, I don't know if he works here or what, he said, I wish the kids were here, and I said, well, the kids wouldn't know who I am. They come up and think you're some kind of just a security guard. And but I see these characters, and I had a guy, I'll tell you a funny story real quick. I had a guy that was, he lived in Middle Tennessee. He's actually from Memphis, but he lived in Nashville. And he come to an event I had several years ago. This was back in the late 2000s, probably around 2006 or 7 or 8, something like that. And I would pick these people out of the audience. And so I had this guy pegged as Rafe Hollister. And so I made a big deal out of him. And I said, Rafe Hollister, and I was cutting up with him and picking at him. And I get away with saying a lot of things. My wife says, you shouldn't have said that. And I said, she said, well, Barney gets away with it, but Sammy's not going to get away with saying some of that stuff. And so I called this guy Rafe Hollister. Well, the next month, he shows up at this show dressed as Rafe Hollister. I'm talking about to the max. And from there on, he started showing up at our events. My kids and I were we did a thing it was called G Entertainment in Portsmouth, Ohio. And as I pulled into the theater parking lot, his car was sitting there. I'll never forget this. And he was there, ready to help me, whatever I needed. He said, what are we going to do tonight? And I go, well, I don't know. I guess I'll redo the script. But it's funny, people like that have enjoyed. I had another gentleman that did Ernest T. Bass for me for a while. Not as good as Bear could do. But we've had some awesome time with that. I don't want to take up much time.
No, I want you to take it all.
Well, no,
We got nothing else to do.
yeah. Well, you're going to lead a really sorry life. I'm good, then I won't get on that subject.
That's okay.
I will tell you this much: when people that enjoy, if you do humor, we did our event yesterday at the Ritz Theater, which I'm tickled to death we were getting to do this out here. Madison Insurance Group is sponsoring it for us to do a free show out here for the public. Not had good attendance, but we're trying to do this. We're going to see if we can get some people to start coming to it. But I was sitting there and I was thinking of all the talent in East Tennessee, musical talent especially. I was talking to Miss Ava, who was on the Lawrence Welk show, and we talked quite a bit about different things. And I said, you know, that amazes me how much talent in East Tennessee there is, musical talent, musicians, singers, and some of y'all know who I'm talking about. I mean, you could just name them, several. Some of you can sing pretty good, some of you can't, I don't know. But you know what, I sit there and I told her, I said, you know, I'm always so envious of singers, because when you get up in front of an audience as a singer, you can get a courtesy applause. When you do humor, and you do comedy, you don't get a courtesy laugh. And this reminded me of that when I was walking in here. This guy's talking about those kids. The worst event I ever did in my life was at the Carnes High School several years ago. They asked me to come and speak to a group of future leaders of America. Worst event I was ever at. They didn't have a clue who I was. I got up and we're doing our routines and sharing jokes and all this stuff and tying with Mayberry. I'm getting nothing. I stopped in the middle of this routine, about a 20-minute routine we do. And I said, how many of you have ever seen the Andy Griffith Show? You know how many hands went up? None. And so I kind of stopped and I segued into just doing jokes and humor. And so I've never taken it for granted, humor, and when God opens the door, how he blesses us with that. Y'all got any questions about Mayberry you want to ask? He wanted to do something on Andy and
I think I asked this once before.
I don't want to talk to you. Go ahead.
Okay, if I'm not mistaken, Francis, how do you pronounce her name?
Bobby Ayer.
Hated Andy Griffith.
They didn't hate each other. They had she was a very distinguished Broadway actress. And what happened was she was doing this role of Aunt Bee. And I've heard this from people that know firsthand, that she was, she didn't really like that role. She was more of an accomplished actress. But now I will say this, there was times on the set it got pretty strenuous, they said. But she was a professional, and she did her job, and, but they were kind of a bitter rivalry there. But she did make a phone call before she died, and she actually lived, if you ever wanna go to North Carolina and see the place that Frances Bobbier lived, and she's buried there in Siler City of all places, that was on the Andy Griffith Show. But she lived in a house that apparently she must have had a habitat for cats. And it was horrible, they said, when they went to clean that place up. But she called Andy Griffith, and they kind of made amends, but that's a true story that she did. But they were all professional. Rodney Dillard, I don't know if y'all know, if you're really fans of the show, which I run into people that are what we call casual Mayberry fans, and there's some are just lunatics, and that really knows how many episodes was in black and white, how many was in color, and all of this. But Rodney Dillard is going to be with us in 2 weeks, actually a week from Saturday, and he's the last living of the Darlings. He's going to be with us at Union County High School. We're doing a thing called Mayberry Comes to Maynardville. If you want any information, you holler at me or get with E.T. or Ron Meredith has some information at WYSH. But Rodney's there, and he has his band, the Dillards, which is he and Doug. Doug played the banjo. You ever heard the song Dooley? Rodney wrote it, and he and one of the band members. But he's going to be with us. He's 79 years old, still touring all over the place. But the fascinating thing about him is we've sat, and I've had him on radio, several stations, and doing radio interviews, and he tells the stories about the Eagles. And in fact, Don Henley just did a CD with him, was on there. But the Rolling Stones were just fascinated by the Dillards. I'm talking about the Darlings. The Darlings. The mountain folk, the Darlings. The Rolling Stones. And of all people, Elton John allowed them to open for him one time. So he has some very, very good stories about that. One of the funny stories real quick is that his brother Doug was known to smoke or ingest anything he could. And so they went to Stonehenge, and he got stoned with the stones at Stonehenge. It's a pretty interesting story.
Well, which one of those Dillards was the one that, when they started playing, he looked like this?
That's Rodney. That's
Okay.
Rodney. He'll be with us. He's the last one that's living. His brother Doug was a great banjo player. They wrote a lot of music that they don't get a lot of credit for. And one of the great things about, you was talking about Andy and Frances Bobbier, one of the things that Andy did, Rodney told me this story. This is a fascinating story because back then, a lot of people think that they all make a lot of money. Well, they didn't. And what happened was Andy allowed the Dillards to play their own original music so they could be paid more. They didn't say anything because of the fact that if somebody on television says anything, if you've got a line, you get paid a lot more money. And so they intentionally did that. That's why the look came by when they do that look. And they didn't say a lot. Briscoe Darling and Denver Pyle was the only one. And Charlene, who we had here 2 years ago, Maggie Peterson, who's just a dear, sweet, sweet lady. And we had her here 2 years ago at an event we did. And she played Charlene Darling, and she had some great stories. In fact, that show we're going to do here in a couple of weeks, I'm going to do a Q&A with Rodney and let the audience ask some questions. We did that with Maggie and him, and they had some great questions about what Andy was like to work with, what the sets were like, what it was like to be on there. So, a lot of fun stuff.
They didn't pay residuals back then, did
They did not, no.
I don't
Some,
think I
certain
paid-
ones did. Certain ones did, but it's very minimal.
I thought it was
That's the
3
deal.
years only, and I think I saw an interview with Don Knotts that was the standard fee. If you had a show that ran more than 3 years, if it showed, syndicated, you got 3 years, that's it. Now, he said that this is a long
You
time.
want to do this, you want me to? I mean, I went to the library all the way.
No, please.
Good Lord, I flew to get out here.
He didn't leave his
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Hurry up. Let's go. We
okay,
gotta
okay. Barney said that Andy made the money because he on the show, produced
He did
the
not.
show.
He
I
didn't.
mean, as a producer.
He didn't produce it. Aaron Rubin and Sheldon Leonard produced it. Andy helped create it and was scripted. I'll tell you who was brilliant, and obviously y'all know who I'm talking about, but he sat around the table as a little boy, and Andy Griffith, one of the things, Ron Howard, if you ever see interviews of Ron Howard, he was called Ronnie Howard. If you ever see any old pictures of Ron Howard, an autograph, and I've got one, it says Ronnie, R-O-N-N-Y. Everything was Ronnie Howard. But he said one of the greatest compliments he ever got was they sat around each week, at the episodes, and they would talk, and Andy would say, "Okay, or Ronnie, what would you do? How would you react to that?" And he let him, and you think about it, that probably helped a lot with why he's such a great director at this time. But Andy didn't produce or direct, but they did sit around the table, and they did, that's one thing that he and Don Knotts said, that the directors would allow them to say, you know, I'm from the South, this is the way we would do it. And if you're a fan of the show, if you'll remember the first season, Andy is kind of a real hickey sounding. They changed that, and the transition was because of Don Knotts being so, Andy realized pretty quick that Don Knotts was the comedic actor. And so he kind of played the straight part. And it's funny when you talk about the 3-year, Don Knotts signed on for 5 years because that's what Andy told him he was gonna do, 5 years. And they were with Universal, he signed with Universal Pictures, but Viacom, who owns all the rights, CBS, that owns all the rights to the Andy Griffith reruns, it's kind of funny. People says, why did Don Knotts leave? They got mad at each other. That's not what happened. He wanted to do 5 years. He signed to do 5 years because Andy told him that's all he was doing was 5 years. But Andy decided to do that 6th year, and Don Knotts had already signed to do pictures. The Incredible Mr. Limpet and The Ghost of Mr. Chicken was his first 2. So.
You met Barney?
We did. Met him on 3 occasions. I met Don Knotts. We got to meet him, very cordial, very nice gentleman. Got to meet him backstage. It was in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. It was actually the 35th anniversary, so that's been 25 years ago because we just celebrated the 61st. But it was the weekend of the 35th anniversary, and there were 16 of the cast that was there. And so I went back and I stayed with Don Knotts, and the whole time the others I didn't care about, and I went by and got to be, but I stood back there by Don Knotts, and I got up to him and just absolutely was an idiot because I just froze and got up to him, patted him on the back, and said, "God bless you, Mr. Lott," and got a picture and some stuff signed. But he's very, very nice, very cordial, and he was very, very unassuming. That character was probably a little bit of what he really was like in real life. I love seeing actors and performers because if you go backstage, and we have been blessed directly or indirectly to get to meet a lot of people because of doing Barney, and you get to see what they're really like. And I have been really disappointed in some people, but I'll tell you what, I was not with Don Knotts. He was solid, just quiet, but he was not rude at all. He was very warm and signed anything we wanted him to. How much time you got? You leaving? We need to leave.
No,
He's
it's
got
a couple hours.
Couple hours. Well, I don't have a couple hours.
When did you have the first thought that you could do Barney Fife? What caused you to do that?
Charlie knows me better than anybody in here. I was always so bashful. I was bashful, wasn't I, Charlie? Always bashful at school. I never dated any of the girls we went to school with or anything. I was so bashful and backwards. And but I love the Andy Griffith Show. My daddy would have made. Anybody here remember my daddy at all?
Remember?
You remember? Mm-hmm. Who's Gann? Yeah, Mr. Gann remembers my mom and dad. Your dad, was your dad that owned the store? Yeah. Mr. Gann would tell me stories about, but my daddy would have made a better Barney than me because he was. I remember when I don't know who was got in trouble up north. Somebody got in trouble, and we was all the time picking at him and one of my brothers and asking him about. He come home one night and said we call them Barneyisms, but they're really daddyisms. You know, he'd do those little gestures. And one night he come in and one of my brothers said, "Jeff, shoot anybody tonight?" No. I didn't take the baby out of the holster. And I'm sitting there thinking, my daddy's Barney. But I was always bashful, quiet, but I loved the show. Would cut up doing things off and on with some other buddies of mine. And in 1992, we wrote a play, and we did it in Knoxville called Mayberry Christmas. And one of my buddies does Goober, and one of my other buddies does Floyd the Barber. If you've ever heard of the Kingdom Heirs that's singing Dollywood now, well, my buddy Gene McKinney is the original founder and original lead singer for them. He's still singing. He's got a group now called Heartland Quartet. They still sing, but he played Floyd the Barber as good as anybody I've ever seen. I'll tell you this real quick, and because people says you like doing Barney, and I do enjoy it, but I'm gonna tell you something. Guys like me, we barely scratch the surface of what Don Knotts got from that character. So it's really humbling when somebody comes up and says, "Oh, you do a good job as Barney," because I tell them, you can't hold a candle or barely scratch the surface of what Don Knotts did with the character. But I love that we keep Mayberry alive. That's why, what silly things we do. One of the groups that I do not care to work with is Elvis impersonators. I've sat backstage at theaters many a time, and you don't do Elvis, do you?
No.
Okay, good. Because I want to tell you something. I've sat backstage, and I worked at the theater in Pigeon Forge for a couple of years while I was there. I had a show 6 nights a week, and it was great because I had a different audience each night, so it was great. But I've sat backstage with several different Elvis impersonators, and I love Elvis. Don't get me wrong, but I sat back there with them, and I'm sitting there and I look at them and I go, "You realize you're not Elvis, right?" "What do you mean?" Like that. I'm like, "I know I'm not Barney, but I believe you really think you're Elvis, don't you?" And I've run into a lot of those guys. Elvis would be really proud of you, yeah, especially the fat version.
Let's go back probably 15 years ago. Rick Scarborough was our speaker that day.
Ricky Scarborough.
When he was chief of police here. And you wasn't a speaker, but I had arranged for you to show up.
Yeah, Ricky Scarborough's I love Ricky. I don't call him Rick. Y'all call him Rick? Is that what everybody calls him?
You didn't that day.
I call him Ricky. I never have called him anything else now. But I told Molly the other day I stopped if I'm out here, I try to eat at Hoskins or go by and see Charlie or something. But and I don't get out here. We've got an office here, but I don't really work out in the office well. But I stopped to see Molly and I said, "Will you do me a favor? Tell Ricky to call me." And she goes, "What?" Like that. I said, he told me he asked me something, he had something to say. But that day we came in here, and I don't know if any of y'all, was anybody here?
I remember. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and Ricky was up talking, and I don't think he remembered me he didn't know me. I don't think he'd ever met me.
I don't know.
But like my wife says, you get away with doing a lot of stuff that other times, if you're doing it yourself, you get shot at. But Ricky was a good sport about it. But we had a good time with Rick that day. And I'll tell you, doing the law enforcement, I was just at an event in Chattanooga, and Hamilton County Sheriff come up to me and we was talking about some stuff. And I said, he says, "Do you ever get in trouble?" Not trouble, but you know what I mean. And I said, "I'm gonna tell you a funny one I did." Y'all remember Ken Swall, Channel 10? Well, Ken had me come up to Campbell County several years ago. Any of y'all from Campbell County? Y'all remember the Sheriff Ron McClellan?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I never met the guy before. So Ken said, "When the sheriff gets here, we're gonna play a joke on him. And I want you to go up to him and put your handcuffs on him. You know where Ron has a hook." So it wasn't funny to me. I'm up there and I'm like, "All right, buddy, let's go here." And I whip out them handcuffs and he looked at me and he goes, "I believe I can get out of them." And I felt like an absolute idiot. But we proceeded. He said, "Will you do me a favor?" He said, would you do something?" And this is the kind of the ministry side of what we do, is the way the Lord works it out. He said, "Would you do me a favor?" He said, "If you've got time, when we get done here in a little bit at this event, will you jump in my car and let's go down to the jail and I want to take you around to the inmates." And I go, "Well, this is a real gun and I've got a bullet in my pocket. I don't worry about it." So I'm like, "Okay." So I go down there and I'm cutting up with these inmates and stuff and having a great time with them. And I'm thinking, I wouldn't have got to do this any other way. So yeah, we've had some fun time. That was a good time. We had a good time.
You handcuffed him that day, remember?
I think so, yeah. Well, I didn't have a key.
And you did a celebration for Freddie Fagan, or was it
Freddie,
Randy Fletcher? We were doing a fundraiser.
Randy Fletcher, we'll tell them too quick, and then I know you have to wrap up. But I had Randy Fletcher. Now he has a brother. What's his brother's name?
Roger.
Okay. Does Roger come to these? Okay. Randy Fletcher was, what would that have been, late 2000s maybe? Early
Close,
yeah.
yeah.
And y'all have to meet at Food City now because of this incident probably. But they had your breakfast club down there at the
Rocky Top.
Rocky Top, wasn't it? Yeah, and so I go in there one morning, E.T. here has me come in there and we're cutting up with him, and so I shoot the gun off, and obviously it's a blank, but it's loud, and man, we had I don't think, did you get to go back after that?
No, they kicked us out of it. You remember Dan crawling under the table that day?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you the story. And I ran into Mark Packer. Y'all know Mark Packer is from WVLT. He stopped me the other night. We were doing a thing at the Foundry in Knoxville for the Veterans Memorial, and he stopped me and said, "Hey, come here a minute." And I said, "Hey, before you say anything, I just ran into our buddy Freddie Fagan." I said, "I just sat and ate lunch with him the other day." And he said, "Oh man," and he started. He says, he's asked me about something else. But that night at the Freddie the Love Story, the book we had at the Clinton High School, you had me come back out there for that.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Packer was the MC, is that right?
Yes.
And so I get Freddie in there, and oh man, y'all know how Freddie is. And I think it was a History of Barney, he said. I shot the gun off, but he come in there, and that was such a thrill. I'll tell you this, I have 4 sets of uniforms of Barney, that because I had to, when I worked 6 nights a week, I had to have several different uniform sets. Well, I now have 2. Freddie Fagan has the other 2. He keeps losing them. If anybody in here knows how to hem some pants, I just gave him another pair of these actual uniform pants yesterday, and he is my guest. If you ever come to the Ridge Theater, I bring him around there, and he sits up front with me. So yesterday I had Lori Tucker, and Freddie sitting there, and he is I've known Freddie since we were little, Charlie. I've known Freddie, and Freddie is the bright spot when I come to Clinton. If I go to Hoskins, I want Freddie eating with me. And I went in there the other day, and Molly gave us a great compliment, said that she was tickled we came in because he was so curled up in the booth.
Well, tell us what church you're involved in now.
Well, I spent 26 years at Sevier Heights. We actually was together. I was at 26 years at Sevier Heights. I taught. People say, "Are you a preacher?" I'm a Bible teacher. My passion is ministry, and I teach it now. I'm helping my brother at the church I grew up in Knoxville. In fact, it's where I met my wife of 35 years. And I'm at New Beverly Baptist Church in Knoxville, and I'm helping. I do every other Sunday as far as the service, but I teach every Sunday in the sanctuary at 10 o'clock, and I just enjoy it because I love sharing the gospel. I don't make no problem about it. Don't apologize to nobody about it. And I served 5 years in the Knox County Sheriff's Office, and I was one of the things I enjoyed doing. I didn't enjoy it at first, but they moved me my last 3 years of what's called criminal warrants, and I was part of a U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force, which I did violent offenders. So I would get the worst of the worst, and I'd be transporting them a lot of times after we captured them, and I'd have the opportunity to really talk to them about the Lord. And it sounds silly, but I tell people this: Barney as a platform has opened the doors. I'm done. This is done. But I had the first guy I had that I had to hold at gunpoint. I was at a house, and I'm standing there holding him at gunpoint, and he looks up at me. Him and his brother, I got them in the scene from Jerry Springer. They got on wife beaters, and he looks up at me and he goes, "You that guy that does Barney?" He said, "He was at my mama's church here a while back." I can't tell you what the other officers told him, but thank you.
And you had 2 sons in Major League Baseball, right?
Well, no, I have one son that plays minor league baseball. He's still in minor league baseball. He's doing well. He's in what's equivalent to AAA right now, and he's doing well. He led the one league he was in earlier in the year, led them in saves this year, but very proud of him. And then I've got he plays Gomer. If you ever get to see him, he'll be up at the Union County High School here in a couple of weeks. But then we had another one that played college ball as well. Now I've got 2 sons that do all well. My wife we're blessed.
Who shoot your gun?
No, I don't really want to. You want me to? You want me to?
Yeah.
No. I'm a little scared.
You're not.
I got another mug. Oh, this is a pretty one
This is
here.
a pretty one.
Hold on, I'm doing this. Thank you, brother. Appreciate y'all. Hey, I'm gonna run, Charlie.